Welcome to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachel Sweet. Breathe, eat, sleep, thrive in every aspect of your life. What does thriving actually mean? Thriving is not a word, it's an action, a way of living. And that's what the Best Living Show is all about. So get ready, step into a new narrative, and find a new way of being. There's a beautiful connection, a spark that flies at the intersection between the genetic code and your internal guidance system. We're going to throw away the culture that would tell us that thriving is something only for a few. Every one of us is unique. It's our time to discover why. The Best Living Show starts now. I'm your host, Dr. Rachel Sweet, and in today's podcast, we're going to be talking all about body composition. And there's a lot of research out there in regards to body composition, exploring the dynamic interplay between lifestyle, genetics, and epigenetics. And there's good reason for that, because worldwide, more than 2.2 billion people are affected by being overweight or obese. And of course, this comes with associated metabolic complications. Recent studies have looked at physical activity and how it serves as a powerful epigenetic modifier for attenuating waist circumference, and looking at epigenetic aging as it accelerates in regard to having excess adiposity. Myself have genetics that lead me to have obesity. One of those genes that I have is the FTO gene. And one of the things that I learned through becoming an epigenetic coach was that exercise is a powerful epigenetic modifier of this gene in particular. Now, as we know, genetics is not the only factor, of course, that plays into obesity. It's inadequate to think that it's solely that. And of course, that has sparked lots of research into epigenetic regulation, how the genes interact with the environment, and how obesity develops, and how it can be epigenetically modified. And of course, epigenetics shows that it's not dynamic. It's not only dynamic, but it's also reversible. So when we look at these epigenetic mechanisms, we're looking at DNA methylation, histone modification, microRNA methylation, mediated regulation, and so on. And DNA methylation is the most investigated epigenetic mechanism. And in regards to this study that I talked about earlier, as far as accelerating biological aging, this is what we're looking at. Now, if you want to reverse and have better epigenetic changes for a healthy weight, you need a personalized path to wellness beyond the one-size-fits-all of weight loss industry that seems to be out there, touting different kind of get skinny now kind of things. And of course, we want to be able to work with our genetics, modify epigenetic changes, and maintain a healthy weight. And there's two ways that we can do that, and that is eating that is optimized for us and to stay active. The research, beyond a shadow of a doubt, shows that resistance training, endurance exercise impact our metabolism, our muscle development, and the epigenetic changes are quite significant of how positive the impact of exercise is on our body composition. And having an active lifestyle, of course, has positive health outcomes, including weight loss, or it can also be building muscle, of course. And this, as we age, of course, is so important because we want to maintain good bone density and obviously guard against, as women, sarcopenia, which is being under-muscled as we get aging as we get older. So, of course, in my own health journey, I started about 7 years ago down this journey, and I've learned a lot along the way. Of course, one of the things I learned was that exercise was a powerful epigenetic modifier for me in particular, for my genetics to be able to lose weight. And earlier this year, a friend of mine said that they were working with a physique trainer. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. What is this all about? And, this was definitely out of the realm of kind of what I thought might be comfortable for me. But I decided to explore it, and then found out another colleague of mine was working with Elias, who we have on the show tonight. And I decided that I was going to be really curious and see if I could delve into this. And I know when I've told people I'm working with a physique trainer, they go, "Are you doing like a bikini contest?" I'm like, no. I'm not, who knows where this will go. But I've been working with Michael for about 6 months now, and I thought it'd be great to have him on the show because I know as I went through my own journey with Michael, there was lots in the beginning, lots of questions. Why are we doing this? Why would it no? This is not. I don't eat this, and I don't eat that. And he kept coming back with answers as to why this was something I needed to do. So I thought, you know what? Let's have him on the show, and we're going to talk about this. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, and that's funny that you mentioned that because people are often referred to me, as someone who is kind of known as a bodybuilding trainer who aren't bodybuilders, and they think, how is this going to apply to me at all, right? I don't want to get on stage. That's the last thing on earth that I would want to do. And the thing about it is a lot of the same principles that apply to getting somebody to a bodybuilding competition also apply to losing weight. And I don't even like to focus on losing weight. What I like to focus on is making your body look the way you want it to look. Right. And so the key to that is, for most people, is losing fat and keeping muscle, and then potentially even building muscle afterwards to shape your body into what you want it to look like. And those are the same concepts that we do in bodybuilding. We focus on losing fat while maintaining muscle, especially when we're talking about getting into contest shape or doing a contest prep that a lot of people associate with bodybuilding. It's losing fat while keeping muscle. And the issue is that many of the, weight loss, fat loss trends that are out there don't focus on that. They focus on the scale, they focus on, yes, losing weight, but not necessarily what weight are you losing, and are you trying to, make your body look a certain way, and are you going to end up with the results that you really want, because that number on the scale is, we've talked about before, is not the best indicator of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm guilty of that. I know.
Well, everybody is.
Let me let the listeners know a little bit about you, because I didn't get a chance to do that, but I just want everybody to know that Michael's been involved in the fitness industry for more than 30 years. So he's definitely qualified to talk about this. He started weight training at the age of 15, very young, and was in his first bodybuilding competition in 1988. And then, of course, has since been involved in this industry as a competitor, trainer, contest promoter, judge, industry professional. He has written articles. He's got a chapter in a book that's actually in, it's called Building the Perfect Beast Naturally, which is actually about female contest prep, which I thought was very interesting. And of course, he has multiple nutrition training and contest prep articles, like I said. And of course, as he mentioned earlier, he works not only with athletes and bodybuilding competitors, but non-athletes like me. So he has a myriad of experience, of course, working with clients. So I just wanted to get that in there before we got too far. But, when I started working with you, you asked me a series of questions, and it was quite clear that you were going to design something that was kind of personal to me, kind of like my food choices that I like within obviously reason. And then like what my specific goals were, which at the time was like gaining a little bit of muscle and losing a lot of fat. And, that was kind of what drew me to you, is that you kind of had that idea in mind that it was going to be not this kind of one size fits all, and it was going to be designed on kind of my preferences.
Sure, absolutely. Because, that's the only way that it works, really. I remember when I first started learning about fitness and nutrition back in the 80s, as you mentioned, when I started. Of course, there wasn't the internet back then. It was books, right? I bought every book that I could. I bought every bodybuilding magazine that I could. And in the magazines, it would have, they would have diets, or here's your fat loss diet. And of course, it was laid out, here's your, meal 1 through 5. And sometimes I would look at that and I would think, okay, that's pretty cool, but that's not my life. That's not my schedule. I can't do it like that. And So when I first started doing this as a business, when I first started designing programs, I remember I thought, well, I need to get it to where it's much more customized to each person than that kind of, cookie cutter thing that I remember seeing. But the mistake that I made when I started was that I thought that the thing that would prevent people from being successful was getting bored. And so I designed the program or the nutrition program so that, every lunch was different and every dinner was different, because what I had seen in the magazines was not that. And I thought, well, okay, I gotta make it different so people will do it. And then what I learned is that nobody wants to make a different, lunch every single day, or buy the groceries to, or can afford to do that, or have a different, every single dinner be different and every single lunch be different.
Right.
So what I had to do was figure out how to combine, okay, what are the specific likes of a person? What are the foods that they're going to eat? What are things they're absolutely not going to do? Combine that with something that could give them the ability to have as much or little variety as they wanted to. Because in bodybuilding, we often have people that, at least for that phase of contest prep, that 12 to 16 weeks, they may eat the same thing every single day. It's just easier for them. It works in their food prep, and they may eat chicken and jasmine rice and broccoli, every 3 meals a day plus their in between meals, but they may do those same foods every day. Now, what I found is most other people, and especially people that aren't athletes, that they're not going to do that. I mean, some of them might, but most of them aren't. And so what you have to do is give choices that fit in the range of things that they'll eat, but also in the range of things that are going to get them to what their goal is. And that's kind of been the fine tuning of the process that I've done over the years, is coming up with a way to do that. Give people enough choices that they feel like they have variety, but still gets the job done.
Right. Yeah. And, I know, like, from me, like, when you kind of laid out the eating plan, it took me a while to kind of settle into, well, I like this, I don't like that, kind of, just, and then, yeah, now I have kind of a routine that, like, I have a variety of foods that I like, and then I make a bunch of those, like, on Sunday, and, it's all in my fridge. And then as I go through the week, I just kind of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, based on, what meal it is I'm eating. And then it gives me kind of enough variety that, I mean, and let's face it, most of us, like, if when we go out, we tend to pick the same thing from the menu, right? That's my favorite dish. And then the one that I like, so
right. Even
I
with the
think,
cheat meal, right?
yeah. So I think people tend to think, like, oh, well, this is just not going to be a variety, but most of us, like, tend to like the same kind of food. So I found it pretty easy to work within that.
I think what happens sometimes when people first, see a plan that's a lot different than what they've done before, maybe at first it's kind of like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? It looks so, it looks like such a mountain to climb. But then when you realize, when you get into it, it really isn't. You just have to find the way to customize it to you. And I try to do that as much as I can. But there are certain protein sources and certain carb sources that most people are going to pick from, and so I list those things. But then I always have people ask me, well, can I eat this? Can we fit this in there? And often there are ways to do that. I have people that are hunters, and maybe they have deer or they have some kind of wild game, and they say, hey, can I do that? Yeah, there's ways to do that. I don't put that on the plan because I can't list every possible thing. But I always say that let's talk about it. If there are other things that you want to eat, and we'll talk about, why or why not, that's a good, a good option for you.
So I want to go back a little bit and kind of talk about, you were super young when you kind of started this journey. So kind of what got you into this and kept you going in it?
Sure. Well, when I was in ninth grade, I was by far the smallest kid in my class. I was just a small kid. I weighed, actually going into 10th grade, I weighed 103 pounds. So, really definitely the smallest guy. Most of the girls were bigger than me, in 10th grade. And I just got to a point where I didn't want to be that anymore. And so my dad had played football in college and lifted weights, and he kind of got me started on a workout program. I had the concrete and plastic weights down in my basement with a little bench and just a kind of minimal set to get started. But my dad actually wrote me out my first program, and it was 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I did that, and I just took to it religiously. I mean, it was, I started seeing changes almost immediately. And I remember the first month that I worked out, I gained an inch on my arms. And that was it to me. And, that's where, how I do the measurements now with our programs. That's kind of where that came from for me, that I found personally that when you see weight is one thing, but when you see actual changes on your body, when you see inches changing, one way or another, that's real change. That shows you that, hey, that wasn't that way a month ago, and now it is. And that kind of thing is what motivated me to keep going. And then, of course, over that first year, I went from 103 to 135. So I gained 32 pounds the first year that I started lifting weights. So that made a big difference in my life, how I felt about myself. And it definitely inspired me to keep going. And that was at the point when I started just reading and learning everything I possibly could about bodybuilding and about growing and getting stronger and building muscle. And as I mentioned, that we didn't have the internet then, and it was a lot different. And I would go to the mall, to the bookstore at the mall, into the fitness and health section, and I'd save up my money and I would buy another book. That's what I did to learn about it. And of course, every magazine that I could possibly read. But over the course of high school, I went from weighing 103 pounds in 10th grade to when I graduated, I was 165. So I gained, 62 pounds from 10th grade to 12th grade, and all entirely naturally. And by the time I graduated from high school, I was actually competing in powerlifting, competitions, because for my size and weight, I've become really strong for what I weighed. And I really got into that aspect of it. And that was before I ever did bodybuilding, but powerlifting was first. But just seeing the changes that the weights made was what really inspired me, to get into it.
And were there, like, in this kind of, as you progressed through your journey, like, what kind of challenges did you face, like, in this, as you went through?
I think there were several things. One, it's never fast enough, and I see this with.
I want to agree with that.
With everybody else, right? The people that I coach now, because I went through that too. I thought, I had these visions in my head of what I wanted to be like and what I wanted to look like, and it takes time. It just, especially when you're trying to gain muscle. Gaining muscle is a lot slower process than losing fat is. Sometimes people don't. It's interesting because when you have people that are trying to lose weight who've had difficulty losing fat, to them, it's easy to gain weight. Gosh, losing weight would be the hardest part. But if you're small and you have a really high metabolism and you don't have a lot of, fat, and you're trying to gain weight, you're actually having to create new tissue. It's not that you're just burning it off. And that's it's a slow process. And it's always, it's the same challenge that people face now, but you have these goals, and staying motivated, long enough to see yourself actually reach them, is definitely was a challenge for me. And, it continues to be, even now with my goals now. There's always a balance between, you've got what you want and what you want to achieve. And then you have all the other, things, whether it's time constraints or whether it, your job or your work or whatever else, finding that balance, in between. Of course, when I got to college, I was busy with college, and I had to find a way to stick with my training, and then try to eat well when I was at school, living in a dorm, which is, not easy. I didn't have, the money to buy the supplements and things that I wanted. So I had to find ways to do it, to get those things from what was available, to me. And so things like that are always challenges, but those are things that I now think about when I'm creating programs for people. I try very hard not to make it something that has to be expensive.
Right.
There are a few supplements that I recommend, but it's not really a lot. It's not really a lot of things. And I try to use pretty simple foods. It's things that you can get at any grocery store. It doesn't have to be organic, or it doesn't have to be, some particular brand that's real fancy. I mean, literally, you can get probably everything at Walmart.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be expensive, because that's the thing. That is not that's not the limiting factor to people achieving their goals. It's not that, oh, I can't get these organic eggs, or I can't buy this. That's not, it's never that. That's never what it is. And you can do it with simple things that you can get anywhere. And you don't have to have lots of money for supplements, and there are certain programs you see out there that are dependent on, well, you have to buy all these things that go along with it. And that's not really what it's about. And there are certain supplements that can be helpful. That absolutely, that's true that there are, but you can do it without them. If you can add a few of them in, it kind of makes things easier. We've talked about protein supplements, and it just makes it a little bit easier to get your protein in, but you can do it without that. And I have people that don't use them. But just find balance. Balance is the
I think that was, I think that was the good thing. Like when because I myself prefer to eat, kind of what I call real food and not too much like, powders and things like that. And so, when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, you kind of gave like, oh, well, you could have like egg whites, or you could do protein powder, or you could have a yogurt, or you can have protein powder. So I tried to put in as much as possible, like the egg whites, the yogurt, those kind of things, so that I'm not relying just on the powders. But now, if you're busy or you're traveling or whatever, it's super easy then to do that and still be in line with what you're trying to do, which is great. So there's that flexibility if you need it.
And that's because, what it comes down to is that the best, and we talked about this recently, but the best program on paper, it isn't any good if you can't actually do it. You know what I mean? And like we talked about that with your workout. Like I really liked that last workout I gave you, but in your amount of time that you have, we had to adjust it a bit because it just wasn't working. And so the thing is that if you say you've got to eat these foods at this time, and the person has a super busy job, and they don't have 15 minutes to stop at 10 o'clock and eat chicken and broccoli or whatever, but they do have 2 minutes to do a protein shake, or they can take it with them and be sipping on it while they're doing their work, then that works for them. And so having those kind of options is definitely important to people being successful, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And in your work, obviously you've worked with thousands of clients. Like, kind of, what were the biggest kind of takeaways and valuable lessons that you learned with through working with other clients?
I think it's to listen to the people and find out what they are really wanting, not to put my expectations onto them, but because like I'll have people ask me, they'll say, well, how much weight do you think I need to lose? And I'll say, let's go by when you look the way that you want to look, and then we'll be there, right? Not to say, oh, I see this person and I think they need to lose 50 pounds. So you put this number of 50 pounds in their head, where in reality, they might feel fantastic after they lost 30 pounds and so you don't want them thinking that, oh, if I don't achieve this, then I'm failing, and I think that the other thing is, and it's what I touched on a minute ago, it's creating something, and I think this is what I do that's maybe different than other people, or I'll put it this way, it's what I feel like my niche is that learning how to get everything that you're doing working together to create the result that you're trying to achieve. Everything that you're doing. So your nutrition, the takeaway is to learn that you have to find a way to do that the person can actually do, that actually works for them. And so there's often a little bit of back and forth that goes into figuring out, what is actually going to work. Sometimes people start off really gung-ho and they say, they can do 6 days a week and that's what they want to do. But in reality, it doesn't work out that way. They're having trouble with that. And that's okay. If you can only do 3 days a week, then let's make a plan that's designed for 3 days a week, and let's do 3 days a week every single week. Let's get that in. Or if you can do 4 or 5, and then what I say is, hey, okay, if you can only do 3 and that's what we're doing, then hit that 3 every single week. And then if we find that you're doing that really well, and then we can expand on that, then great. Let's do that, because it may help you achieve your goals more quickly if we can do more than 3 a week. But at the end of the day, it's a plan is never going to work, no matter how great it is on paper, if the person can't actually do it. And that's what I've had to learn how to work with people and figure out. And that's what I try to get from my questions that I ask in the beginning, is try to get as much information as possible about that, so I can design something that's very specific for that person.
Right. Yeah. And I what I also like is that, when we started, you ask for obviously feedback each week on how things are going. And I would say, like, well, I just didn't get this done. It just didn't happen this week. And you were just like, okay, no problem. Like, let's next week, like, try again.
I don't believe in beating people up. I want you to keep doing it, and so, we have to talk about, okay, hey, if this is happening all the time, well, let's maybe find a way we need to adjust your program so that doesn't happen, or
Right.
Maybe we need to change something. But real life happens. That we all have other things that we're doing in life, and this is, as much as it's important, it's often not the most important thing in somebody's life. And so we have to just keep going. And another part of what I do is motivation, helping people stay motivated. And I think we've done this before, to where also seeing what's actually happening, right? Sometimes people don't realize that the scale moves differently than in their mind maybe they think it's going to move, right? So often people think, well, just every day I get on the scale, it's going to be lower, right? And it's not. Your body goes through fluctuations. Your weight goes up and down. And one of the things that I like to do is well, first of all, weight is not the only thing that we go by, and I try to stress that, and I like measurements a lot more, but also that, as you are losing weight, it's important to focus on the change from the week before. Like, what were the highs and what were the lows the week before, and now what are you seeing this week? Not what is the number on Friday, what did you weigh that day, but how many, if you had 4 or 5 high numbers and one of your lowest numbers last week, and the next week you have 3 or 4 of those low numbers, and you have 1 or 2 of those high numbers. That's change. And maybe you're still in the same range you were the week before, but you have less of the high numbers and more of the low numbers. That means something's happening, right? And pretty soon the high numbers go away and new low numbers come in, and that's really how weight loss happens. It's not a every day you weigh less, And
I remember having that conversation with you, actually, and you kept saying, well, yes, those top numbers will fall away, and then there'll be more of those bottom numbers. And so I do remember having that conversation. And like I think I've even said to you, like, it seems like I get to a low number and then I bounce right off of it. And it's not like a lot. It's just, the fluctuation. And as you said, this could be a lot of things, right? Water and water retention.
And there's so many things that affect your weight.
Inflammation, right? Because if you had a really hard workout, it could be, like your muscles are like building up at that point. Because I also noticed that I have I call it the not so smart scale, but I have one of those smart.
right.
And you can see the fluctuation in what the muscle mass, and I can only assume that's as I'm working out, it's kind of like tearing and expanding, and then like reconstituting, and all of that fluctuates in weight.
Part of the recovery process is so as you go through the week and you train multiple body parts, then those muscle cells take in water, and that water has weight, and the larger or smaller person you are, the more that changes, and I have guys that I coach that are 240, 50 pound guys that their weight fluctuates 6 pounds in a day. I mean, from
Oh,
one day to the next, or even from
wow.
morning to night, the same day, right?
Wow.
And
Wow.
so that's why I like to stress to people, like you are not a certain weight, right? You
Yes.
are a range of weights.
Yeah.
You fluctuate within a range of weights. And what we want to see is that range of weight, going down if we're trying to lose weight, or going up if we're trying to gain weight. But you're not a weight. So getting on the
Right.
scale on one day and seeing what that number is doesn't really tell you anything.
Well, we're going to hold right there because we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to continue talking about obviously fitness and how to modify your body composition. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachelle Sweet, and tonight we are talking all about body composition transformation with Michael Elias. And before the break, we were talking about how he designs programs that are flexible to you, the individual, not one size fits all. And Michael, before we get started, I want folks to know where they could find you. How would they get in contact with you if they're interested in finding out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is physiquefx.com. On that website, I have a contact me, page that people can reach me through. I have a lot of my clients, pictures on there, so you can see transformations of, both bodybuilding clients and, regular lifestyle clients. It's funny because the bodybuilding clients tend to like their pictures to be up a little bit more than, maybe regular people. So I have a lot of bodybuilding clients on that page, but I do work with many, and actually more, quote unquote, regular people, non-athletes. But yeah, that's the best way for people to reach me, is to visit physiquefx.com, and you can see the different programs I offer, and examples of the transformations that I've been able to do with people. And yeah, I'd love for your viewers to check it out.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I know, like when I looked, I was kind of like, oh, I don't, there's a lot of bodybuilders, and I just kind of thought, well, that's not me. But again, the two people that referred me are non-athletes. And I just referred somebody else to you, actually, that is
Right.
not an athlete. Now she's going to go do a race that she wants
That's
to
a
train
really
for.
cool. That's a
I
really
know,
cool
right? I
race that
know.
she's
Yeah,
doing.
Lori. She's been on my show actually, because she's a dietitian. So she was on the show earlier this year, and that race is going to be awesome. So
yeah, I'm actually excited to be a part of helping her prepare for that. I have coached. I've had the opportunity to coach all kinds of different athletes, and I've coached people that have done some of these endurance races where they do, and triathletes and people like that. I've coached MMA fighters. I mean, all different types of people. But this is her race is the first. I've never, an endurance horse race, which is crazy.
Right. Yeah.
It's a crazy thing. But yeah, I look forward to helping her with that.
Yeah, that's going to be great. So, we talked a lot about nutrition before, and kind of designing the nutrition plan. How do you balance? Because for my program, I do both strength training and cardiovascular. So how do you balance that for people? Again, I mean, I'm assuming it's on their goals. I know, you do that for me based on my goal, but, kind of, is there a rhyme, reason, science behind that?
Sure. Well, there are a couple factors. As you mentioned in the very beginning, we definitely want to combine nutrition with resistance training, because without resistance training, if all you do is diet, and I'm speaking on dieting because that's probably 70 to 80% of my clients, that's what they come for. They want fat loss or weight loss. Of course, I do work with people that are trying to gain weight too, but fat loss and weight loss are the main thing. If you try to lose weight without exercise, just by restricting your calories coming in, then what's going to happen is your metabolism is going to downregulate or basically drop to try to match what's coming in, because your body doesn't know why the calories are lower. It just knows that they are. And so without some type of resistance training, your body just tries to match the calories that's coming in, and pretty soon you don't have a caloric deficit anymore, and you're not losing fat. The weight training or the resistance training is what helps to keep your muscle. So we always want to do some kind of resistance training, because that tells your body that, hey, although I would like to get rid of some of this muscle, because muscle is a draw on calories. Muscle burns calories. And when your calories are low, you try to, I have a financial analogy I like to use, and that is, imagine if, if your expenses are high and your income drops, what are you going to do? You're going to get rid of some expenses, right? So to your body, muscle is an expense. It costs calories. It takes calories to keep it going. And so if all you do is restrict your calories, then what your body wants to do is get rid of some of the expense, get rid of some of that muscle. But by incorporating weight training, what happens is your body says, well, I'd like to get rid of that muscle, but I'm having to use it. For all it knows, you're having to use that muscle to go get your food, right?
Hunt and gather.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's saying, hey, I'd like to get rid of some of those biceps and, lats and legs, but because you're using that on a regular basis, I see that I can't get rid of it. You still need it. So incorporating the weight training in is important. Now, to your question, how do I kind of decide what to do? And well, it really depends on the person and what they have available. And remember, that's one of the questions that I always ask people is I say, okay, tell me what you have available, because not everybody can go to a gym. Some people have a home gym that they've created and they have what they have there. Some people don't have a lot at home. And I really went through that during the COVID years, working with people when the gyms were closed and you couldn't buy any equipment because it was all bought up. And so we had to come up with some creative, workouts with what people had at home. But it always starts with what does the person have available? And then and how can we create a resistance training workout with that? And then what cardio method do they have available? Because my philosophy is that we burn fat off, we don't starve it off. So we are going to, clean up your diet, and we are going to put your calories in a place where we can create a caloric deficit. So it's not that we don't cut down calories, but my philosophy is that we want to burn calories to burn the fat off. And so that's usually going to involve some type of cardio. And so, well, what do the people have available? If they're at a gym, well, then there's all kinds of ways that we can do it. If they're not at a gym, then, what do you have at home? I went through, during COVID, helping people with a lot of kind of online exercise programs, not designing them, but referring them to different ones, that were out there and available that maybe they could subscribe to, that they could do at home with their computer or their TV or whatever, because that's what it came down to. Now, it's always nice if you have a treadmill or you have a bike or something that we can do your cardio on. But at the end of the day, we got to find a way to do it. So I take into account what people have available. And I mean, I've done milk jugs with water in them before for people to do their lifting weights. I mean, it's whatever somebody has. And I try to stress that, say, people ask me, hey, I don't have a gym membership. Can I still do your program? Absolutely. We'll find a way to do it with what you have.
Yeah. And I love that, because one of my things is always like, keep it simple. Nutrition can be pretty simple. Like you said, it's like simple foods that don't have to be expensive. And the same thing with, the exercise. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can start wherever you are and like get into this and start to transform. Yeah, that's awesome. So as far as like when you're, you first start talking and going through the questions with people, and what for you are kind of the essential factors to consider, like if we're going to transform body composition?
So the things that I look at, it's trying to give somebody a reasonable expectation of time, right? And so how long is it going to take to achieve the goals that you have, and what's realistic to do? And what I look at is, okay, where are they now and where do they want to be? You know, it's a lot different if somebody needs to lose 10 or 15 pounds to reach their goal versus if somebody needs to lose 50, right? We have to be realistic with them of, hey, okay, this is going to take this amount of time. And it's not going to be Biggest Loser weight loss where you're dropping 5 or 7 pounds a week, right? That's not the way it really works for real people. So I try to,
and I've been told there's never a reunion show because they don't keep the weight off.
It's not sustainable, right. It's not sustainable at that rate of loss.
Yeah.
So I try to be realistic. And then on top of that, I try to design programs so that when someone reaches their goal, they can sustain that, right? First of all, they've developed nutrition and exercise habits that they can keep doing. And you know, number two, it's not something that's going to, you know, that is going to quit as soon as they quit doing this really, you know, specific thing. Like, you know, there are certain diets out there that they may work temporarily, but as soon as you quit doing that diet, you're gonna probably gain more weight than you lost. And so I always want to create something that's sustainable. And that's something that's important to me. But I think the first thing is I look at their answers and I think, okay, is there going to have to be some real education here as to why we're doing what we're doing? Or is this a person that, you know, and I kind of have two types of people. I have people that come to me that really they're probably doing 80% of things right. They have the right ideas. They're eating pretty much the right foods. They're exercising, but something that they're doing but they've stalled, and something that they're doing is not quite all working together. And I can usually figure that out, what it is, by their answers. So I have those people, and they're not usually too difficult. It's just making some adjustments, you know, from what they're doing. It's not a dramatic change for them. And then I have people that it's just pretty dramatic change, that it's like, I haven't been eating, you know, multiple meals a day. I've been eating once a day. I've been, you know, not eating. I've been doing these things that really are counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve. And then you have to, there's a whole teaching aspect to it, because I believe if people understand why they're doing what they're doing, that they're much more apt to, you know, buy into it and follow it.
Right. Yeah. I know for me, like in the beginning, there's a couple of things that like were different than what I was doing. And one of them was having the protein before bed. Like, I'm like, no, I don't eat like after 7 o'clock. I don't do that. And, you know, there's a lot of research also that, you know, they say, don't eat before, you know, 3 hours before bed. But you were like, no, you're going to need this for recovery. And so, you know, found a casein product that is like slow release. It does not affect me at all with sleeping. In fact, I've noticed that my deep sleep has increased. Now that could be obviously exercise pulls obviously for deep sleep too, but it seems to have affected my sleep in a positive way. So now I'm kind of like at night, I gotta have my casein. Like,
and that's what
I don't have anything else. I gotta have that.
You know, and even though you are someone who had, you know, knows about exercise and knows about nutrition, that was something that was different for you. And you know, I remember at first I had to kind of explain what it was and why. And what that's, you know, that brings up a really good point. And that is that it matters what you eat, right? It's not just don't eat before bed, because there are a lot of aspects where that's very true. Yeah, you don't. There are a lot of things you don't want to eat right before bed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Spicy food that would, you know, like keep you hot and whatever at night.
Or something that's not, or something that's not going to digest easily. That's more likely to sit and end up being stored. You know, not going to be burned. But you know, the casein protein, as we talked about, has a very specific purpose that time. And you know what it does is it keeps your blood sugar from dropping so low. It supplies protein overnight to your muscles, which is when a lot of the recovery process happens. And so it does a lot of really good things for you. But it's not the same as eating, you know, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before you go to bed. It doesn't give you it's not just eating before you go to bed. And you know, that touches on something. I don't want to, you know, go way off on this tangent, but you know, macros are a big thing right now, and there are a lot of people. I've had a lot of people that come to me actually that were doing, you know, some sort of macro diet where they're counting the amount of protein and carbs and fat that they eat a day, and that's their primary focus. And that's good, and that can be a good thing for people to kind of get knowledgeable about what they're eating, and to
Mhm.
start off saying, hey, wow, I didn't realize I've been eating way too many, carbs or not enough protein or whatever it is. Macros can be a good thing, but the flip side of that is that it's not just what, how many macros you eat, but it's what they are and when you eat them. And I call that nutrient timing. And so
Yeah.
it matters the type of protein or the type of carbs and when you take that in, not just the total amount that you eat in a day. And that's the aspect that people don't really kind of always understand that are doing macro diets. And so what'll happen is they'll get them to a certain point, but then they kind of plateau and they stall and are like, hey, I'm not going any further. That's because we need to refine what you're doing, further
And I would say
than
that is definitely where I was. I've been, like I said, doing this kind of a calorie deficit for the last 7 years, counting the macros, changing the different macros. Like, I knew that low carb didn't work for me. It isn't genetically a good diet for me. And, so I was trying to do kind of what they call the messy middle, right? The kind of balanced approach. That wasn't really working for me. And so it was interesting when I started working with you, because you put my protein up much higher than I'd been doing, my carbs much higher than I've been doing, and then the fat much lower.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just like the way that you paired the foods, sometimes it was a carbohydrate and a fat, and sometimes it's a carbohydrate and a protein, and, just these different variations throughout the day. And so I thought, well, it's got to be a reason for this. So what is the reason? But like sometimes it's protein and fats, and sometimes it's carbs and proteins. What is that kind of
Sure,
science?
and one thing, and I know we've talked a lot about this, between us, but everything that we do on the programs that I design have a reason. It's all for a purpose. Now, it's not always the only way to do things, and I'm definitely not a person that says, well, that's wrong. But these are things that I've developed that have worked. And it depends on where we are in the day. Like, for instance, we're going to take in more carbs earlier in the day. We take them in at breakfast, we take them in pre-workout, we take them in post-workout, we take them in lunch, and then we taper that down, as we get towards the evening, to where, maybe we're doing maybe protein and vegetables, or protein in a smaller serving of say a complex carb. And that's all about because we want what we're taking in to be used. We want it to be metabolized and to be burned. We don't want it to be stored when we're trying to lose weight. Now, when we're doing pre-workout, my famous thing that I like to do is apple and peanut butter, pre-workout. And that becomes a thing that, a lot of my clients really like. It becomes kind of like a treat, but it also has a very specific purpose. And the purpose is this. So you have the apple that has fructose, which is a medium glycemic carb, but that it will start digesting first. And so what we're trying to do is fuel our workout. In other words, we want to provide fuel so that you can train, harder and get the most out of your workout. So by combining the apple and the peanut butter together, the apple digests first and kind of fuels the beginning portion of your workout. And then about the time that you've got that into your system, the peanut butter digests, and the fats from the peanut butter become a fuel source. And that fuels the latter half of your workout. And so the two of those together kind of provide a sustained energy throughout your training. And that's the purpose of that, and why we do that particular meal pre-workout. And I have some variations of that I do if, people don't like one or the other of those things, or I have people that are allergic to peanut butter, different things. But that's kind of the purpose of why we do that at that time. Often we do, a protein and a carbohydrate together. We make sure we get those slow digesting carbs in, during the day, because what they do is they keep your blood sugar stable from one meal to the next, and they help keep cortisol from becoming elevated. And cortisol is our enemy. What happens with cortisol is when cortisol elevates, it signals your body that it's not, it's not getting the energy that it needs. It's often because your blood sugar is low, so you don't have that energy supply. Blood sugar and cortisol are kind of, opposite in your body. As your blood sugar drops, your body releases cortisol because it wants to be able to get energy from
Yeah.
wherever it needs it. And what
It's,
happens with
it's saying you're stressed, let's go eat.
yeah, exactly. For some reason or another. Now, sometimes it could be a major, stressful event that happens and your cortisol shoots through the roof, or
Mhm.
sometimes it can just be because your blood sugar is low. It doesn't necessarily have to be because something, really bad is happening, but that is a stress to your body when your blood sugar becomes low. And when cortisol is elevated, basically what it says is all hands on deck. It says, I need energy from wherever I can get it. So yeah, I'll take it from the fat, but I'm also going to take it from that muscle. I'm going to take it from wherever I can get it to get energy. And so if you're going around through your day with elevated cortisol, there's a good chance you're going to be burning muscle tissue in addition to fat. And what happens is muscle keeps your metabolism higher. As we talked about earlier, muscle requires calories to sustain it. And so it increases the amount of calories that your body naturally burns a day, it's called your basal metabolic rate, but the amount of muscle that you have on your body affects how many calories you burn a day. So the last thing that you want to do, even if you have no interest in being a bodybuilder or anything like that, the last thing that you want to do is lose muscle while you're dieting, because number one, the amount of calories you burn a day is going to go down. And then number two, as you lose that fat, your body's not going to look the way you want it to either. It's not going to have the shape and the look to it that you want if you're dieting your muscle off. This is how people get, the arms that, they're skinny, but they jiggle, back and forth.
The bye-byes.
They've dieted their muscle off, right? So all they have left is like skin and some fat. We don't want that, we don't. That's what we call skinny fat. We don't want to be skinny fat,
Skinny fat, yeah. I think that's the most important takeaway, right? Is there's got to be, if you're engaging in a plan to become healthy, whether it's building muscle, or losing fat, it's got to have multiple components to it, right? We've got to have the nutrition, we've got to have the exercise, and within the exercise, got to be both resistant and endurance. I see a lot of information out there saying, no, just lift weights and don't worry about the cardio. But if anything, I learned from you is we're going to have more success with getting the fat off of my body if I do cardio, which not my favorite thing to do, but it's working.
It's a necessary evil, right? Cardio, nobody likes cardio. I mean, there's a few random people out there that like cardio, but it's a necessary evil. And it's what kind, to touch on that. I don't have people run.
No.
Yes, running burns a lot of calories, but and I'm not, this is nothing to the runners out there. I actually coach people who are runners. Listen, if that's what you want to be, is a runner, then absolutely you can be a runner. But most people who come to me, they don't want to be runners. They want their body to look a certain way, right? And the problem with running is that it burns off muscle that you don't need for running, right? So your lats go away a lot of time, your shoulders, the legs get real front to back. They don't have a lot of sweep to them. Your arms, you lose that muscle on your arms, because if what your body tries to do if you're a runner is it tries to optimize your body for running, and it says let's keep all the muscle we need for running and let's get rid of the muscle that we don't need for running. And so sometimes people are surprised that I want them to do maybe a lower intensity cardio than something like that, because again, it goes to the aspect of not burning muscle while burning fat off. And so it's about tailoring the type of exercise you're doing to what the person's goals are, right? And that's different types of exercise are going to be better at getting them there.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're back to that one size does not fit everybody. And it's best to have a program that is tailored to you. And if you're looking out there for programs, obviously, again, Michael, if you can just give your website again, if people want to take a look at your
absolutely. It's physiquefx.com, PhysiqueFX.com. I'd love for your visitors to come visit my website, see some of the transformations I've done from people. Understand that I definitely work with regular people, not just bodybuilders.
Oh yeah, believe me, I'm just a regular person.
As I mentioned before, the bodybuilders really like to put their before and after, pictures. And the funny thing about that is that often they don't like the before pictures, but once they have the after picture, then they're okay with it, right?
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed so much having you on the show. I know this is a big topic and we've kind of just scratched the surface, but one of the things that I like to ask people before I end the show is, what are you doing on a daily basis to intentionally thrive?
Oh, to intentionally thrive. Well, we'll talk a little bit aside from fitness. Of course, my fitness has been my life, and it's something that's always part of my life. So I always, just like anybody else, I have to find ways to make sure I fit it in and do what I'm doing, and follow my own diet and all of that. But I'm
Eat
a
your own
big
dog food.
you know, I still have my cheat meal every week. I do it too, one a week. I do the same thing. But I'm a big continuing education person, and I have, in my other life away from this, I'm an IT person, believe it or not. But I just completed my master's degree in cybersecurity. I'm actually
Wow.
getting a second master's degree. And so, education, because, and I do the same thing with my fitness and health. I'm always reading everything that's new, that's out there. I'm learning. I think, the answer is, how do I thrive, is to always be learning, keeping my mind active, learning new things, being open to new things. So that's definitely my thing that I do.
That's awesome. I love it. And I hope that the guests learned something tonight from this show. I know working with Michael, I certainly have learned a lot about myself and what it takes to transform my body composition. So thank you so much again for being on the show. Thank you everybody for tuning in. If you want to know more about the podcast, please go to drrachelsweet.com. If you're interested in finding out more about Michael, visit his website. Also, it is in the show notes. And yeah, we're happy to take anybody who wants to, send us a note and ask questions. Please do. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to the Best Living Show. I'm your host, Dr. Rachel Sweet. Breathe, eat, sleep, thrive in every aspect of your life on transformationtalkradio.com. Tune in Thursdays at 6 p.m. to continue your new narrative and step into a new way of being. We are not what people have told us we are. We are so much more than that. I'm going to help you thrive and get the answers you desire, not only in the external world, but on the inside. For more information, go to drrachelsweet.com. That's drrachelsweet.com.